Is there a prompt? There are 6 emergency exits.
Hello, everybody. This is Ron, your captain speaking. We are currently 30,000 feet in the air, and we haven't even left the airport. We just lit the joint. Just kidding, a little pilot humor there. We like to have fun. Our destination today is Casablanca, Morocco. So everyone, sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for takeoff. We will be arriving in 6 hours.
7-footers, welcome back. Here is with Jarod and Jenna, per usual. Nobody else, just us. 7-footers in the house, guys. What's going on, Jarod? How you doing over there?
I can't complain, staying quarantined, social distancing, doing all that stuff. I mean, it feels like we're going on like 3 years now, but it's been almost 3 months. Listen, we got to be mindful, people, because we don't want to see another spike in this thing, and we want things to, I hate to say get back to normal because that's not a thing, and I hate to also say new normal, but I would like to see things, where we can go back about doing things outside more and doing the things that we enjoy, but also being mindful of this is a new world we're living in.
Right. I mean, a lot of our jobs too is, getting out and about, covering games, doing different things. I mean, you would have been in like knee deep in the season, headed for the playoffs. So it's just crazy to me that I think June will be the 4th month, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's it's just bizarre.
But we're out here still grinding, still creating content, and we have a special quickie episode for you guys today, so you guys know what's up. Let's start with all of the headlines today, which really isn't much besides when is the NBA going to return. We still do not know, but we have a couple more advancements happening in the news now. This is from The Athletic. We have Orlando's Walt Disney World Resort is on track to become the NBA's playing site to resume the 2019-2020 season, hoping to start games as soon as possible. But again, everything is a step-by-step, day-by-day kind of situation. The league is supposed to notify players, we hear, by Woj about hopefully starting a slow step-by-step process to opening facilities. Now, again, we don't know anything accurately. We don't have a date down, but it's looking like the season may return. I say may very, very cautiously, but we are seeing some hope. So, Jarod, what have you heard? What are you thinking about this new development?
Well, you know what I've said all along, right? Which was this idea that we're not seeing basketball this year. I've stood by that, and I've maintained
You
that.
have.
Now, of course, as you know, I talk to people within the league, within the Players Association, and they want to play a season for obvious reasons, and I understand why. Look, it is looking more and more like this Orlando Disney World thing is going to happen, and it's looking like, from what I'm hearing, sometime around mid-July, games may start beginning. Where we heard from ESPN, Zach Lowe and Adrian Wojnarowski, that the league will send out guidelines to teams by June 1st about when players that are out of market can come back to the market, and they can start figuring out the protocol and processes. But Jenna, you and I have talked about this offline on this podcast. And I'm going to reiterate again, the same questions I had before still stand. How are you guaranteeing that everything is going to remain safe and all good in Disney World in Orlando? Okay, cool. Players are quarantined, no problem. How are you guaranteeing they're not bringing in other people and sneaking them into the resort? Who's preparing the food? Are they all tested? How are they getting back and forth from whatever? How are you cleaning all the... Is everybody who is in this bubble that you create, are they all tested and all good and no problems? And how are you maintaining your testing? And where are you... Because they have to feed these people, right? They got to eat. So are the people who work there allowed to go home and come back? Like, what are these processes? These are all the logistical things that I just don't understand how this is going to work. And again, I say this, what is your incentive to be first and come back to then have a breakout or someone test positive, then you got to shut the whole thing down again? To me, it just seems like, we sure about this? And again, I talked about this before. There is this thing on Twitter where they're like, oh, you media people just don't want sports to start back. Hello? This is what we do for a living. Of course I want sports to come back. Nobody wants the NBA back more than I do. But I'm also realistic, and I want this thing to be safe, and I don't want it to stop and then start again. Because again, you have to think about
Exactly.
this too. When is next season going to start? Like if we're starting in, what's happening to next season? And I get the monetary reasons. They want to come back now because if they don't, what happens is the cap for next year gets screwed. It's less, which means people are getting less money, owners, players. I get all that. But at some point, you got to be like, look, forget about that this season, and let's figure out how we're going to start next season and have these protocols in place to, as we go forward, we are prepared to, make the league better as a product, handle any kind of situations that may come up. That's how I see it.
Right, exactly. And I completely agree with you. These are questions that you, as a fan, a concerned person, and a media member, have, as well as questions that will come up as the NBA drops little breadcrumbs of knowledge for us. Again, we don't know anything, but we're hearing that the league office is communicating with teams now. July, maybe we're hoping. And right now, they're kind of discussing a step by step plan on how to get this kind of off the ground running without issues here. But I mean, I think we still have a long way to go.
We do, and it again. Remember, the talk was between quarantining in Orlando and in Las Vegas. Clearly, it looks like Orlando is quote unquote winning the bid. Is the language I'm saying? I'm like, what are we even talking about here, people? Orlando winning the bid? Like, anyway,
Like, what
again,
is the bid?
right? Is it like the Olympics? Like, hey, who's going to be first to be out to to win the Summer Games? Like, again, I want basketball to come back, but I also and I would love to have a champion crowned award, all the things that we love about this sport, but at
Mm-hmm.
what cost, right? Like again, because if it goes on and if all it takes is one, if one player tests positive, then what? You got to
Mm-hmm.
shut the whole thing down again, and then guess what? Orlando's out as a site now because you know what I mean. So
Exactly.
I just want to know what are all the protocols that we're taking in place and how many health professionals and scientists are involved. Now, Adam Silver's a great commissioner. We all agree with that. I just hope that Adam continues to, again, we understand that the money is real and they have to make it up. I get it, trust me. But let's weigh this out and figure out, are you robbing Peter to pay Paul? You do all this and we get it going, what happens to next season, right? So I just, look short term, but also long term simultaneously, which of course is really hard to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we'll keep that at the forefront and we'll keep looking for updates and keep you guys posted per usual. You guys know what's up. But now let's move into the rest of our topics today, which is just one because it was too good not to cover it. And we'll get both of our thoughts on it. It is Basketball County, the new documentary with the executive producer, Kevin Durant, and Rich Kleiman, other executive producers, Victor Oladipo, Quinn Cook. Obviously, it is about where they came from, PG County, right in Washington, D.C., or outside of Washington, D.C., excuse me. They just came out with a documentary on Showtime, and Jarod and I both got the chance to see it, and we're going to review it, give our thoughts, and kind of get the ball rolling here about the conversation because it dives into how these players are bred here in PG County and they share the same passions and the same love for this area and just this brotherhood and this family sense of how many wonderful, incredible stars are bred from PG County. We have over 25 NBA players along with WNBA players that came out of PG County, including all of the ones that I named before. So let's get started here because it dives into not only basketball, culture, race, everything that you can imagine, and basically how, the origins of black basketball got started in a way as well. So Jarod, kick it off for us.
It's a short documentary, right? It's only about an hour
Yeah,
long. And
I
I
was
would
surprised.
say, yeah, and I heard Rich Kleiman do a couple interviews and talk about it. He said, guys, we're only asking you to do an hour. It's not as long as the Last Dance documentary series, which everybody's been talking about. But I think when you're making a documentary series, you need time to let certain areas breathe. And to me, an hour just wasn't enough time.
Yeah.
A lot of these stories I knew just because of one, Jenna, we always joke about this, but like I'm older than you, right? So a lot of these stories like Len Bias and all that stuff, I knew all that stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of people like yourself or younger who don't know those stories, and there wasn't enough cohesion. It was almost like 5 minutes of this, 5 minutes of this, 5 minutes of this, 5 minutes of this, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so we get it. PG is what we're talking about, but there wasn't enough time spent on all the areas. So because look,
Right.
you could have done, and this isn't a land bias documentary, but you could have done a documentary on that all by itself. You could have done a
Right.
documentary on DeMatha High School all by itself, and maybe that is what Kevin, Rich, and in their EPs. So, like, I'm not saying they didn't have input. They did. But the actual directors, maybe they said, wow, there's too much here going on for us to really, deep dive on everything. But then I say, okay, well, then focus it a little bit more then. Cut out some of the fluff that you don't have time to get into. I mean, if you really want to do okay, let's talk about the basketball PG County and how it's something in the water, pun intended, and this is how these players have all developed. We need more than 60 minutes. I mean, at a minimum, this should have been a two-part series, right? Like 2 hours
Yeah.
each, maybe 4 hours total. Like that, because there's so much history there just from the beginning of when basketball arrived to the Prince George's County area, right? And then the rise that you can talk about, and you can give enough breathing room to DeMatha High School and the Len Bias situation and this current crop of players, Steve Francis, et cetera, all these guys who grew
Mm-hmm.
through this area, played in the NBA up to your Kevin Durant's, Michael Beasley's, et cetera, Victor Oladipo's, your modern current day players. I
Mm-hmm.
just think that it's a rich story, and PG County, Prince George's County in Maryland, is a rich county.
Mm-hmm.
It needs more time to breathe, and I feel like we didn't get enough time.
I completely agree. When I watched this, I was very surprised to see how short it was, and it was good. And I see what they were doing, and I like how they split it up, and they made you, like, personally myself, I went in not knowing really any of this. I mean, I know where Kevin Durant's from. I know him and Quinn Cook are very close, and he's from there as well. But I knew extreme surface level. But the thing is, this documentary, it was very good. But again, like you said, you needed more time on the stories, and they told you as much as they could, but it was so little because they didn't have enough time for everything. I mean, the topics that they chose between, Martin Luther King Jr. and, just the different high schools and, bias and all the other storylines that they chose, it was surface level details to make you understand everything as quick as possible, but you needed more. I even knew you needed more going in, like after, but I thought it was good in the sense that they got across the message, in my opinion, of PG County and, what went down there in the basketball mecca that it is. I mean, I didn't know all of those NBA players and WNBA players came out of there. So that was super interesting. And it just very interesting to learn about the shared passion and the brotherhood and how, to me, one of the central themes was, if you're from PG, your family, you help each other out, no matter younger, older. I thought it was interesting that Quinn Cook, and everybody lived under, was it Wooten's roof?
No, Curtis Malone.
Curtis Malone, yes, I'm sorry.
Who ended up going to jail for drug trafficking.
Right, yeah, that story in itself, too. You needed so much more. But, I didn't think it was bad at all. I thought it was, I saw what they were trying to do, and but it needed more time. It was, and you know what? Granted, I also just got done watching 10 episodes of The Last Dance, so
I think that's hard,
factor.
right? Like, I think that's the lens through which everybody's going to view documentary and sports documentary from now on. Is like, oh, The Last Dance and its 10 part. And look, and I have my critiques about The Last Dance, but that gave us 10 hours, right? Like, I mean, I'm not saying we needed 10 hours of this, but we needed more than 59 minutes, right? Like, because if my thing was focus it. Okay, if PG County is quote unquote the star of the documentary, then make PG County the star, right? And then everything else is sort of the additional co-star to floor. Because it's not a Kevin Durant documentary. It's not what this is, right? He's just one of the actors who, is part of this story. But there needed to be a central leading figure. I know that they wanted it to be PG County, but that's not how it came across to me, right? You didn't give PG County enough of a setup to be like, yeah, we know it's a basketball rich county. Okay. But tell me more, right? Like, what is it about
show me
PG
inside
County?
the town. Yeah, take us through there. Show us some visuals. It was kind of like mixed footage here and there. And, I still don't know much about Victor Oladipo's background after watching it. So that I have questions about. And also, I felt like we learned a lot about Michael Beasley, though, but which also made me ask, where is Michael Beasley?
Yeah.
So that I
Yeah.
thought was interesting in itself too, because we
Yeah.
haven't seen him in a minute.
Yeah. Bees is an interesting guy, and so you remember, Durant went to Texas, left after his freshman year in NBA. Beasley was at Kansas State the year after, right? So they're essentially the same age. And then
Yeah.
Beasley gets drafted the following year, and they were close growing up, as you saw in the documentary. And they've done stuff later on that like they were extremely close. But Beasley, he struggled with a lot of things, right?
Yeah, you could tell.
Just life, being a pro basketball player, and the money, the fame, and look, we
Yeah.
talk about it all the time. It's very difficult for these guys, and again, it touched on it briefly when Curtis Malone brought Bees in. I mean, he was under house arrest, right? I mean, so there's a lot going on with these athletes, and then to thrust on millions and fame and all this stuff on top of that, when you are not mentally prepared for what that means, it's a lot, right? And that the game can swallow you up in that way. And I think Beasley's struggling. But this doc, again, we we could have done more with the connection of Prince George's County and the several towns that make it up, and what is it about the certain areas, and Seat Pleasant, where Durant's from, and the people who go to Power Memorial. I'm sorry, not Power Memorial. Excuse me. The Power Memorial was the famed New York City high school. Who go to DeMatha, who go to some of the other really good high schools. The DMV, right? The whole area, like it just seemed like it was struggling a little bit with, okay, how do
Mhm.
we connect all this? But it seemed like they also had a mandate of, they didn't want to make it long. They want it to be short. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, if it's going to be short, you're going to get just surface level top end things, because you don't have time to dive into anything. And again, what is it about PG County? What's in that water, right? Get some stuff more from the average person from PG County on the street. Not yeah, we need the basketball people, but talk to someone who's lived in Prince George's County for 20, 25 years, who knows the local sports scene, right? More of that kind of, to give the, again, to make Prince George County the star. And then everyone else, we see the link and the connection here. It tries to do it, because you see it with how basketball came to the YMCA. They go back to Duke Ellington and Charles Drew, which is something I didn't know. That was amazing that they played basketball. And then the connection, right, to the early days, Len Bias. Okay, but more of that connective tissue, right? We didn't have enough of that to tell us this story. And so it was, so it struggled in that regard. But that, again, making documentaries or making television, that's hard, man. It's not easy. Like, it's really difficult to make very good documentaries.
No, right. I mean, bottom line, I think that they, again, like we keep saying, they needed more time. In general, doc or not, I love Quinn Cook's stories, that kind of bottom to the top story, G League, all that. So I enjoyed watching that. There was something that really stuck out to me that I'm sure it stuck out to you, since KD is your guy. I did love the part where, obviously you said it's not a KD doc, but just to see KD and like a glimpse inside of his life is fascinating, because we all know he's very private in ways and things like that. But I did love seeing, I didn't realize how close him and Michael Beasley were. So
Yeah,
I loved
yeah.
seeing that. And there was a moment, the AAU teams and stuff like that. And Beasley and KD played together on, I think it was the PG Jaguars. And I guess Beasley passed KD the ball. KD does this awesome shot. And you could see, even in that old footage, his form is the same. That step back, wet jumper, as we say, was the same. And he says, quote, I wrote it down. I had to stop everything. He goes, it was like tunnel vision at the rim. I was a bucket getter, he said. It was history after that. And Beasley was like, yeah, you shot that shit, like whatever. And it was such a cool moment. I love seeing those full circle things, that old school footage. Like I said, his form is the same. He looks great. It's all still effortless. He's got that lanky form. I love that quote though. I was a bucket getter. I haven't heard that in a minute.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I don't gotta say nothing. I mean, people have their beefs with Kevin Durant about all these various things and what have you, but and his social media habits and all that stuff. But you know what I always say, like the man gets buckets, right? Like he's a certified bucket getter. That jumper stays wet. Like he's just that dude. Arguably, 1, 2 greatest basketball player in the world right now, right? Injury notwithstanding. So it's one of those things, and I feel like it was cool to see Bees and him sort of like he's like, man, I just grab rebound pass out to KD, and he just shoot, right? And that's just, I mean, it's again, like as you said, the form is the same, the jumper, everything.
It is.
But that goes into talking about what we always try to let people know, fans know about these players. Yeah, you got to have some talent and some natural gifts, but talent and natural gifts ain't enough. Like these guys work, and you can tell that he works. Because to your point, it looks exactly the same. You know why it does? Because he's taken about 1 billion jump shots in his life, right? You just get in the gym and you just work on it. Kill across, right? Pull up, shoot. Like, that's how you get to be good. It's the repetition, all the hard work. And it's, we're always a champion for this. And, I'm a champion for this, Jenna. Like, we always talk about these guys, and it's always about, yes, they got, as I said, many natural gifts. But we don't talk enough about the hard work it takes to get to the NBA, and then once you're there, to become one of the 1, 2, or 3 greatest basketball players in the world. That is an insane level and amount of work ethic to get that good. And, it's just, we do, but the collective we in media, we don't talk enough about that. And you saw that sort of in the young version of him, like, yo, you're like, that looks just, yeah, because that's how you got to do to get to that level.
Exactly. I mean, the old footage, and even Victor Oladipo was saying when he was younger in high school, he would go to the gym before 6 a.m. just to get practice in. And the way these PG County bred ballers use basketball as a weapon to stay off the streets, to not get involved in drugs. I mean, it's super commendable, and it shows you the bigger picture of what the game does for people, especially in these types of areas and different things like that. I do appreciate that they tied in race to it, they tied in the culture to it, and they're educating us. They educated me. I mean, I always talk to you about this. You're usually educating me, but it's fascinating for me to see these types of things and join in on these conversations, because you have to educate yourself first. So I feel like I did learn, and it was very cool. Again, another moment to see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
a young Lou Alcindor, his senior year at Power Memorial High School.
Otherwise known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I was like, well, first they said the name, and I was like, who is this? Who is this fool? And then I was like, oh my God, it's Kareem. What do you mean? And that high school game, I had to write this down too. 12,500 people in the arena to watch these high school kids play.
Yep.
Are you kidding me?
That was in the 60s. Yeah, so Power Memorial, again, a famed program up here in New York City. Power Memorial doesn't exist as a school anymore. It shut its doors some number of years ago now. But yeah, I mean, Power Memorial was that school. I mean, and they had this lengthy winning streak. Obviously, their most famous alumni, Lou Alcindor, also known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He changed his name right after he won the title with the Milwaukee Bucks, his first NBA championship. He changed his name. He'd always been a follower of the Nation of Islam, and really sort of really took that in right after. And it was incredible. And DeMatha High School, I mean, so many legends have gone through those doors and played for DeMatha. And again, that's one of those powerhouse national programs. Like when you really study the history of basketball, right? Like Power, DeMatha, those are and then now prep schools like Oak Hill and whatever. Those are like national powerhouse programs. Detroit Southwestern. I mean, these are schools where the cream of the crop came from, and it was really cool to see that old footage. I mean, of course I wasn't alive then, but it made you nostalgic for oh man, I would love to have been at that game.
No, right? And you know what? Speaking of all that stuff and the old school and everything, I have to ask, were you a fan of the go-go music? I mean, it was you and me, but I don't know about you.
So go-go music is such a regional thing, right? The DC and the DMV, like go-go music is so central to that area. I knew of it, but being a New York City guy, like go-go was never my thing. I can appreciate that, though, to how that is the soundtrack to their games, much like how hip-hop is the soundtrack to a lot of players from this area in New York City's game, and now since hip-hop is the dominant culture for so many, it has become that. But it is interesting to see how music used to be so regional back in the day. It isn't as much anymore, but certain areas had a sound, right? And that sound and that style was influential and instrumental in these players' games. So it was pretty cool. Like when Beavis was like, everybody calls it hesitation. That's not what we call it. That's the hands up. Like, and it's like that, right? And that's all from that go-go influence. That was very cool. I really appreciated that.
I did too. I like that they included that. There is one thing that this doc had, not to sound like we're criticizing it, because this doc...
No, look, we can critique it, and it's fine.
Yeah, there are critiques I have, but what I do commend the doc is, whether how well or not it was done, the fact of how much they squeezed into the 52 minutes, I think it was. I mean, we saw a ton of different people, eras, stories, cultural things, different things down to, the streets and things like that. I mean, the central takeaway I got was, I got to go visit PG County. I mean, Victor Oladipo, you should see me with my little notepad. Look at my scribbles. I was writing all these quotes down. I love this kind of stuff. Victor Oladipo said from PG County, this is his quote, "This is where I learned how to become a man. This is where I learned the beauty of teamwork." Teamwork seems like the best way to describe PG County.
Yeah. Family,
teamwork, blood, sweat, tears, ride or die, and like the real kind of like blood, sweat, tears family vibe.
I mean, the big thing, right, as we wrap this up, is that it's that story of PG County and that togetherness and family can speak to a lot of different areas around the country and can be the story of a lot of basketball players who come from humble beginnings. And this game literally takes them around the world and changes the lives of their families and future generations, right? That in and of itself is incredible. But the point that you're making about the takeaway and about the documentary, all of those things we mentioned is so we know that the county's rich, right? There are so many different areas that can be spoken to through a creative work. And going back to, again, just fair criticism of the documentary, it could have done more with more time, right? Because of the 12 things you mentioned, we could have done 4 of them. And if we did 4 of them like deeply, again, with the whole crux being the connection being basketball, it would have been great, right? So I think, and again, look, as I said, it's hard to make documentaries, and especially documentaries that are led by athletes. LeBron's done stuff. Everybody's like doing this. The bar is set higher now, man, and how can you really make a unique and interesting story and one that resonates? Because there is enough in there to resonate. But again, because of the format, it was too quick that I'm not sure how people are going to wrap their arms around it. So I'll be curious to see what other people say about the doc when they see it.
I will too. I could have easily seen it spread out into 4 or 5,
Right. If you did like 4 hours of this, like, okay. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing I was going to say, I want to see PG County. I know what it is, but I want to see it.
Some road trip live from PG County.
Right, we'll take a trip there, visit some plant parks.
We'll do it live from the Kevin Durant Center in Maryland.
Heck yeah, $13 million center. Good for him though, for giving back to the community, and that's what they emphasize too at the end of the doc. To give back. If we don't give back to what the game has given us, what is the point?
If you don't know where you've come from, you will not know where you're going.
Exactly, and that is a good note to end it on. Draw a nice philosophical quote by you on this fine day.
I try.
I love it. Well, we are grateful that we have this type of content to cover. Keep giving you guys content, and keep hanging with us. Keep subscribing. Hit us up with questions. Maybe Jarod and I will do some type of live. And,
Q&A or something.
do something fun like that. Yeah, mix it up in these quarantine times. So, Jarod, tell them where to find us.
You guys know where to find us: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. We're on Twitter and Instagram at JS Hector, at Jenna Lemoncelli, at 7footers Pod on Twitter, at 7footers Podcast on Instagram, and we will talk to you guys soon.
All right, guys, stay tuned. Thanks for hanging with us.
Peace.
Spent a couple years out here with these raps, trying to have a plan that we made come true. Applied to some jobs, but I ain't hit back. I don't wanna trap, what's a man gonna do? Chevy told me come